Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Seth Joyner Show. It is Dallas week. Dallas week. The Dallas Cowboys on Monday night, the Philadelphia Eagles will be taking on the Dallas Cowboys. There is no more intense week than this week right here, because as a Philadelphia Eagles former player, as a fan of the Philadelphia Eagles, there's one thing for certain. We could lose 14 games just as long as we beat the hell out of them damn Cowboys twice a year. Okay. Got a great show for you guys tonight. We're going to break down, what went wrong with the Philadelphia Eagles last week, and then we're going to preview the game coming up. I look at this game last week, and I think you can hang the tag on it as missed opportunities on defense, on offense. And obviously, some of the coaching miscues were missed mistakes. Listen, Jalen Hurts opened up that can of worms on himself all over again about the strength of his arm, but underthrowing 3 wide receivers. But it wasn't all on Jalen Hurts. There's 3 critical points, that I want to touch on before I bring my guest in. You guys know how I feel about pressure on the defensive side of the ball. And the Philadelphia Eagles defense did a masterful job. They had 3 and outs in the first quarter, and they just had Jimmy Garoppolo just all riled up and shaken. I mean, his accuracy was way off. He hadn't really completed anything. And then they get the ball with 2 minutes left in the half. And the next thing you know, boom, 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 they move down the field, and they get 7 points right before the half. You talk about a momentum snatcher, a momentum breaker. A lot of people will talk about, the 91-yard pass in the second half and our inability to get the ball in the end zone. But I look back at those 7 points right before the half and how we got, that offense just all out of sorts. That was the momentum shifter. To me, that was the backbreaker. Now, I will say that because I'm a defensive player, and I will most of the time look at the game through defensive eyes. Jonathan Gannon, did a fantastic job. And then all of a sudden, 2 minutes left in the game, he got real passive. It looked like we were watching Jim Schwartz, at the run the 2-minute drill or at the end of the game trying to preserve a win all over again. We didn't blitz one time. We didn't put any pressure on Jimmy G. They went hurry up offense. And, when you get in hurry up offense, what does that do? That puts your defensive line in a position where you can't rotate. So by the time they got to the 50-yard line, the defensive line was gassed. There was no pressure. And if you let a quarterback like Jimmy Garoppolo sit back there with no pressure, and he knows that there's no pressure, then he's going to operate efficiently. They boom, 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 went down the field and scored. There was no pressure, no blitz, no zone blitz, none of those things to make him and keep him uncomfortable. And that shifted, in my opinion, his confidence in the second half. Now, all of a sudden, he believed that what he experienced through a quarter and, 13 minutes of the second quarter, those things that had him shook, now all of a sudden he gained confidence. And when they went into the second half, he went in the second half with that confidence. And even though they only scored 10 points, those 10 points and the 7 points, right before the half, to me, was the biggest difference in that football game. Now, I'm not going to let Jonathan Gannon off the hook. I'm not going to let Nick Sirianni off the hook, because you come out in the second half, you go 3 and out, your defense holds, you get the ball back, even though you're backed up, you take the shot, 91-yard reception, and you get down to the 1 or 2 yard line, and you can't punch the ball in the hole because you want to get cute with all these trick plays. Not going to let him off the hook. And I'm also going to tip my hat to him because, listen, the thing he did after the game, he did it. Jalen Hurts did it. They all came out and assumed responsibility. And I think that the only way that you get better is you're able to look at yourself in the mirror after a football game and say, you know what? I screwed that up. If you can do that and you be honest with yourself, then that means that you can get better. And I expect for this football team to get better. That being said, the accountability piece, and I love what he said, in order for me to require accountability from my players, I first have to be accountable to myself for what I did. And what I did today wasn't good enough. Jalen Hurts. What I did today, my execution, my operations, it wasn't good enough. I like hearing those types of things from players and coaches because that means that they can get better. Now, I'm not one to run around with my hair on fire. I didn't get too high after week one, not just because it was the Atlanta Falcons, but I didn't get too low after this loss either because, all of the things that we saw that prevented them from winning are things that they can work on, things that they can correct. And let me tell you something. It's my opinion that this football season is going to be an up and down year for this football team. Let me tell you why. You got a young coaching staff. You got one of the youngest head coaches in the game. Okay, so they're going to make some mistakes and they're going to have some ups and downs. You got a young quarterback who's essentially in his rookie season, if you stop and think about it. He hadn't played 16 or 17 games yet, so he's still essentially a rookie. Okay, still learning the game. And then the guys that you're counting on the most to make big plays for you are young wide receivers that are learning how to play the game. Someone asked me today, well, how in the world could Devontae Smith not take advantage of a 32-year-old Josh Norman? Well, let me tell you something. Josh Norman has experience. Josh Norman knows all the little ins and outs, the little things in the game that Devontae Smith doesn't necessarily know. That being said, I still like the kid. I still think he's going to be a star. He's growing. This football team is growing. So I'm going to tell you, like Aaron Rodgers said, RELAX, relax. Everything's going to be okay. All right. This football team is coming up this week against our vaunted rival. If they can't get up for this one, then we got some problems. To help me break it all down, WIP's sideline reporter, in-game sideline reporter, you guys know him. Some of you call him the king. I call him the self-proclaimed king, but, however you want to do it. I got Mr. Howard Eskin joins the show tonight.
Hey, let me just tell you something. All right, let me just straighten this out. People that name themselves, give themselves a nickname like LaFraud James, that's fraudulent. He named himself the King James. Pete Rose gave me the name back in 1982. So it wasn't me. I had no idea, but I walked into a locker room one day after somebody did a story on me on TV, before I went to TV, called me the king of sports talkers, and Pete, from day one, as soon as I walk in the locker room, his locker is right in front of me, and he says, "King, you're the king." And then everybody started calling me king. So I'm not the self-proclaimed king, although I am royalty, and don't you ever forget it.
Well, let me tell you something. I'm glad that you cleared all of that up because there's a lot of people out there that didn't know whether that was a self-proclaimed name or somebody gave it to you. I might not have said that had I known that. Maybe you need to go on social media and put it out there so everybody knows, so we don't give you the business.
Well, maybe social media is what Aaron Rodgers doesn't like. There's all trolls out there. They're haters, twidiots. They're all kinds of nonsense.
Hey, listen, there's haters in life, no matter where you go. Social media, life. You can go down the street to Wawa. There's some haters up in there when you walk in there. It's just the way that it is.
We both had them, haven't we, Seth? We both had them.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I guess I want to talk about what happened on Sunday. But the most pressing thing for me for this football team, and I think that they'll rebound, and I think they'll play well against the Cowboys, is the loss of Brandon Graham, one of your leaders, and the loss of Brandon Brooks for an unspecified amount of time. That contract that Josh Sweat just signed, seems like it's the rent is due. He's going to have to step up in a major way. Even if they decide to play Kerrigan on the other side and he gets more time, on the right side because Barnett is just a bonehead. It's time for him. It's really time for him to step up. Landon Dickerson is a guy who, he stepped in, and I try to watch, how well he played and what he did. I get the sense that he's a much better run blocker than he is a pass blocker, and that's going to be problematic because he's going to have to grow up. He's going to have to grow up real fast. Give me your thoughts on those situations before we jump into what transpired on Sunday.
They will miss Brandon Graham. There's no question. I saw Brandon. He does a show with us on Monday night, and he came out on crutches. And number one, what the Eagles, certainly they'll miss his play on the field. And he did say Josh Sweat can play on the other side. So he
Gotcha.
can do both because he's practiced that way. And I expect him to play well because at the beginning of the season, remember we did a function for one of our sponsors on WIP, and
Right.
the guy I thought would be the guy that really is people weren't looking for would step up would be Josh Sweat, because this guy really is really good. But beyond that, or let's back up. Brandon Graham is going to go to, I guess it's Green Bay, where there's a doctor out there that did the surgery on Brandon Brooks. He's going to be out there for a couple of days, but he's got to be laid up in bed for a month with his leg elevated. I want to see him on the sidelines a month where he has to have his leg elevated. So he's not going to be with the team because he's got to be careful. He's got to, whatever healing process there is. When he's healthy enough to get back on crutches, then he'll be on the sidelines. If he's not playing, you certainly want him on the sidelines to coach up those guys and be the leader. And you got to lead when you're there. And he won't even be able to come into the locker room. He can call guys. That's not the same. You know, that's not the same.
Right.
So they will really miss Brandon Graham. And what a great guy, great leader, terrific player. We'll see how much they're going to miss Brandon Brooks because Landon Dickerson, you just don't walk into the NFL and all of a sudden, I think he played guard or at center mostly at Alabama, right? So you just don't step in and play guard and be as good as the guy who's one of the best in the NFL. So they're going to miss that too. So we'll see how that affects the pressure, and I'm sure teams will scheme against that. So we'll see how that works out. But I think Josh Sweat will do a good job, but they will miss those two guys. And I'm guessing just roughly that Brooks will be out 3 weeks because he has to be on when he's on injured reserve, which he is. He's got to be at least 3 weeks. And Brandon Graham's out for the year, which is he's an irreplaceable guy. But I remember the Super Bowl year, they lost 5 key guys. 5. Now, I don't think this is a Super Bowl team, but they lost 5 key guys. And, you know, that what you guys in the locker room will say, oh, next man up. That year it was the next man up. So that's what they're going to have to do. And that's what's going to have to happen for this team. Hey, I think they've got to be 3-3 after 6 games. And that's not easy when you look at the schedule. That means I think that means they have to beat Dallas. And I think they can. But it's just, the red zone stuff and the goal line stuff and all that was just not good. And you got to execute better. And, it's certainly I didn't like the play. And, even Mike Quick on the air said, this is, he called it, I forget exactly the way he described it, but he knew something was going on. When you put Devontae Smith in the background, something's up. And I'll tell you.
Well, I think the king forgot to pay his internet bill. While he gets that worked out, we'll keep talking. You guys
get to the timeout. And that's it.
You froze up for a minute.
There you go.
You're good.
Nick Sirianni ran down to the official. He wanted to call a timeout on that play, on that 4th down. And when I asked him later, I says, looked like you wanted to call a timeout. Why didn't you do it? He says, well, the clock was running down. Well, if it's running down, you don't like what you saw on defense, then you've got to, the whole thing was a mistake. That was a mistake. He should have called a timeout because he didn't like what he saw with their defense. So before the snap of the ball, and that's when he should have said, okay, enough, call it off. Let's call a new play. And he didn't do that. But again, he's young, as you said, he's new, he's the head coach. There is pressure, but you can't worry about that during the game. But one play, I don't think one play loses a game. You've got to score the block field goal. Just think if that field goal wasn't blocked and Jake Elliott makes it, they had a blocked field goal. Then at the end of the game, then they're only going for a field goal at the end of the game. Then things might be different with San Francisco. So there's a lot of things you could look at. Defense played great. The offense has to be better. I think it's that simple.
Well, listen, it's our job to analyze and break down, the things that we see. The problem is, when you lose a game, those plays that you missed are magnified even that much more. I didn't like their third down efficiency. I feel like they need to activate Jordan Howard, and he needs to be up on Sundays. You got to have that guy that that can get you, a couple of inches or a yard. Or why are we not under center? Some of those situations with Jalen Hurts and his strength, his 600-pound squat. Why aren't we using him the way that the San Francisco 49ers use Jimmy Garoppolo in those short yardage situations? When I look at the opportunities, and I get it. Most coaches, they think, and Nick Sirianni even said it about, the debacle on the goal line. When you call these types of plays and they don't work, then they're not a good idea. But when they work, they're a brilliant idea. Okay. So my thing is, you go with the high percentage. You if you got to call timeout, you call timeout. You call your offensive line over. You talk to them about the importance of making sure that they stay low and they move the line of scrimmage. And you run the football. I just think that when I see coaches run that many trick plays all in a row, and the indecision, that kind of tells me that there's a deficiency in the planning. And listen, I like Nick Sirianni. I like Jonathan Gannon. But the things that we questioned and the things that we were afraid of in week 1 are the things that rear their heads in week 2. So you take 2 steps forward, and then it seems like you take 2 steps back in week 2. And now, we have to ask the question, what team is going to show up this week? That's the interesting piece. I mean, there's just so much to it. When you think about the wide receivers, you got Smith, you got Rager, you've got Watkins. Between those 6 guys, those 3 guys, they had 6 receptions for 135 yards. It's just not going to cut it. Not going to get it done. Wait a minute before you go, because I'm going to give it all to you, and then I'm going to let you run.
That's all right.
Okay.
That's all right.
The tight ends. Where the hell was the tight ends? How can Dallas Goedert go a whole half without catching the ball? Okay. And I already talked about Howard. You might not have a spot for him, and everything that you want to do may revolve around a mid-sized running back in Miles Sanders and a slightly smaller guy and Gainwell. But at the end of the day, when you need a yard, you got to have a running back in the backfield. It's not a small guy. They can get you. They can push the pile and get 1 yard. Go.
Yeah, but that's not the way they run their offense, Seth. I'm going to disagree with you, and I've done it many times throughout your career and my career. Jordan Howard, if you just want him for one short yardage play, what's the sense? They like to use their backs out of the backfield in passing situations, and the other backs that they have are better and they're quicker, and the game's about speed. You can't worry about you're going to need them for 1 yard here and there. You should use, if that's the case, just use Jalen Hurts if you need the 1 yard. I'm not worried about Jordan Howard. So, and who are you going to take? Who are you going to drop down? I mean, Boston Scott, where was he? So, and not that he's a big.
Listen, you got 6, 7 linebackers up every week, okay, and you're not getting any kind of production out of your linebackers. Put one of those guys down, because you're really only playing 2. The rest of those guys are just special teams guys.
Okay, and the mid level, there wasn't much passing in the mid level. I mean, I don't know where that was, and I don't know if that's not the game plan because of the way San Francisco, the way the 49ers played the game. But you do have to involve them more, and you need more production there, and certainly you need the tight ends more. And if Zach Ertz gets through 2 tests, he'll be ready for Monday. They signed Richard Rodgers to the practice squad today, but that doesn't mean I'd rather see. Obviously, we'd rather see Zach Ertz in there with Dallas Goedert.
They got blocking.
Yeah,
got better blocking.
Yeah, you know what? On a couple of plays, that would have helped too, because Dallas Goedert didn't take care of his job a couple of times. But you need to score more. Really, the way I look at it, they scored 3 points. San Francisco fell back, and it just kind of let them. They got sloppy on that last drive. You got to score more than 3 points. Those last 8 points, I don't even count those, because although it made the game close by the score, and they technically had a chance. You got to be better than score 3 points when you're down inside, in the red zone those times, and you don't get all you get is 3 points when you get down there. That has got to change, and I think it will against Dallas. But they got to do offensively. I'm okay with the defense. Let them stay the same. You're going to miss Brandon Graham, but the offense has got, especially against Dallas, because I think their defense is average at best. So they better score there, but they've got to be better. They've got to be better offensively. I look at Jalen Hurts and I say, all right, he can run the ball. On short on those deep throws, he's either long or and teams are going to defend against those bubble screens. I mean, how many weeks can they keep on doing that and get away with it? So you got to do more than those little screen passes to the wide receivers. But I just want to see more offense. I want to see Jalen Hurts be a little bit better. And I think he's going to need to be better through the rest of the season. And the long passes, the wind was kind of swirling down there on the field. So I'll give him a pass on the deep balls. It might have gotten caught up in the wind. I'll give him a pass. But only scoring 3 points for most of the game, I'm not going to give you a pass. And you can't blame everything on the coach. Players play the game. Coaches have to put them out here in the right positions. I get all that. But the players are the ones that execute the game plan. And if they don't do it well enough, then it doesn't make any difference. And there's times there when they looked at the tape, I'm sure they saw where they didn't do it well enough. You can't blame everything on the coach when you only score 3 points until late in the game. That's the way I look at it.
I would never blame it all on the coach, but it's incumbent upon the coach to put his players in the best scenario. It's like playing chess. Okay, if I've got pieces on the board, in order for me to win the game, I've got to strategize and put those pieces in place that helps me and allows me to win the game. So I would never put all the onus on the coaches. I got it in my notes right here. There's enough blame to go around to everyone. But I think that in Sirianni's situation, in week 1 they threw the ball to be able to run it in the second half. I think that was their plan going into this game, given the fact that San Francisco was having problems with their guys on the outside. The problem is, when you try to throw the ball 20 plus yards down the field, that means the quarterback has to have protection. And if the quarterback doesn't have protection, he's either on his back or he's trying to run and make plays on the run. There's a myriad of ways that you can, that in my opinion, they could have been more aggressive. You talk about those bubble screens. Yeah, you got the bubble screen set up, and anytime you get 3 guys to one side, it's a red light, to the side, to the guys on the defensive side of the ball. So my question is, like Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers last night, what do you have off of that? Do you have the tight end screen on the backside? Do you have a running back screen where you sneak him, from the trip side and you fake and run a screen back on the other side? Where's your coordination? Where's what you have that creates doubt in defense's mind? When I look at how he called plays on Sunday, it seemed to me that they had, that they had the playlist, that they knew exactly, the plays that they were running. Now, the San Francisco 49ers have good linebackers, okay? And they do a good job of keying because they play the game with their eyes. They play the game the right way. They can decipher what's going on really, really quick, okay? But that doesn't mean that you abandon, the 2 tight ends, especially if you're going to have 12 personnel, you're going to have 2 tight ends on the field. You cannot abandon the fact that those guys are on the field. You've got to come up with ways to get those guys open. And they just didn't do it. On the defensive side of the ball, listen, I had no problem with Jonathan Gannon. I thought that he put together a massive plan because I felt like going in that the key was shut down the run and put the ball in Jimmy G's hand, because Jimmy G proved the year that they lost the NFC Championship that he wasn't the guy that was going to get it done. And when you move up, you trade up to trade his heir apparent, in year 3 of that massive contract, you've made the admission that you don't think that he's the guy. You're just trying to buy time right now. But the plan was put the ball in his hands because he's skittish. And every single time that we got close to him, he was inaccurate. There was 2 balls that should have been intercepted that weren't intercepted that he, basically threw errantly. And then we get to the end of the first half and we don't continue to apply pressure, and you allow them to move down the field. So while you say that, hey, one play or two plays here or there don't determine the game, I'm of the opinion that, hey, if I'm on the defensive side of the ball, if they don't score, then they don't win. It's 0-0 when the clock is done and we go to overtime. But we had to lead 3-0. I thought that we got overly protective, before the half was over, and overly unaggressive, and it cost us because it swung momentum in their favor. We came out, we got the second half kickoff. They went 3 plays and out. Clearly, the momentum was on their side, So the same way that they adjusted last week, at halftime, I didn't see the adjustments in game this week. Not enough to put us in position where we could dig out of the hole that we created ourselves, a 7-3 hole, which wasn't insurmountable at all. So you're right. I don't put it on the coaches. The players have got to execute. But sometimes, sometimes wrong moves, by the guy that's controlling the pawns and the kings and the rooks on the board, those wrong moves can be detrimental. They don't allow the players to be able to get done what it needs to get done. And on the other side, listen, those guys get paid too. Those coaches get paid too. They watch film. They prepare. It's the same thing. So you got to figure out, okay, how do I outperform, not only physically, but mentally and intellectually on the field during a game?
Yeah, well, they better score touchdowns and not field goals. You don't win with anymore in the NFL with field goals. You got to score touchdowns, and the fact that they didn't was a problem. But I think because I like the coaches, again, we're all trying to get to know them, but I think they will learn just like everybody's supposed to learn. They will learn from what they did, and they will be better at it. And against Dallas, they'll have a chance to be better at it because they're certainly not as good defensively as the 49ers are. And Jimmy Garoppolo, I just don't think he's all that good anyway. And that you have a chance to win that game against a team that some people don't think you should beat. And I worried about that game, and they had a chance, but you can't miss those opportunities too much or it's not going to be a good year. And I don't know what the expectations are for a lot of people, but I think they have a chance to win 8. I think they have a chance to win 8 games. Now, 8 games is not going to get you into the playoffs, but they certainly have to play better than they did. The beginning of the season is going to be a big part of this season. You have to play better than they did on Sunday.
Well, listen, they've got a tough haul coming up, with the teams
they sure do.
They're slated to play. I mean, I looked at the Panthers on that, in the schedule wedged between, the Buccaneers and the Chiefs, and I felt like, that was a gettable game. But when you watch them play, Matt Rule's got those guys, got Sam Darnold playing lights out right now. So that's not going to be, an easy game for them to get. But it's tough when you lose a game that you had right there, to win. Because if they win this game, the confidence level is high. Everybody feels good about them. People are calling in the WIP, losing their mind, talking about we're going to the Super Bowl, all of those types of things. The problem is, when you're a young football team and you lose a game like this, then what you get is, the apprehension that gripped most people, 50% of the fans before the first game, it resurfaces. And some of the people that thought that they were going to do well, all of a sudden, they go over to the dark side, and they're a little disheveled. I just think that, if you understand that football and you can look at that game objectively, you realize that the things that transpired in that football game for this team are things that can be fixed, things that certainly will be fixed. Now, what that means, beyond week 3, and this is certainly a major game for them because, listen, first of all, it's a divisional game. It's against our most hated rival. It, to me, sets the stage for this tough stretch that they're about to face. If they lose this game with all the young linebackers that they have on, with all the young players, somebody just clicked linebackers, and I'm looking at the comments on the side. With all these young players that are on the team, if they lose this game, how does that affect how they proceed? Can they get their minds in the right places? There's a reason why back in the day, coaches didn't like young players because, they're young mentally. It's hard to keep them focused. They don't do
Yep.
all the things they're supposed to do. They're going to make mistakes. They got to grow through the mistakes. They got to get experience, so on and so forth. How does that affect this football team moving forward if by some stretch of the imagination they go into Dallas and they walk out of there empty-handed?
They're going to win. I think they have a good chance of winning. I'm not a big fan of Dallas for a lot of reasons, but I'm trying to look at how good the football team is. I think people got a little too excited the way they played because of the way they played in their first game against Tampa. And as we see, Tampa's defense may not even be close to what they were before when Atlanta went up and down on the field on Sunday. So I'm not excited about Dak Prescott. The Eagles have had, now it's different coaches, have had really good defensive game plans against him to confuse him. Buffalo, it's the same kind of mindset, and they're going to look at that stuff in the past. And I think they're going to play well defensively against Dallas, and they should score points. It's almost like, and it's too early in the season to say, well, you have to win this game. They have to win this game because you don't think they're going to beat Kansas City. So if they don't win this game, then they're 1-3, and then you have Carolina on the road and Tampa. Although that Tampa game might be interesting because Tampa plays 2 tough games the week before, and it's a Thursday night for them on the road. So I'm getting ahead of myself, but I think they have a chance to beat Tampa. If they're 3-3 after 6 games, they're going to have a really good year. And this is one of the games that they have to win to get to be there in that situation. And I think they have a good chance. That's not a home field advantage there. That stadium was around when you were playing, right, Seth? Was that stadium around when you were playing? Mm-hmm. Okay. I just don't think it's a home field advantage because it's too big. The noise doesn't come showering down on the people like it does at Lincoln Financial Field or a lot of the other places. I just don't think it's as good a home field advantage. And the record shows it. Actually, their record, and I'm looking, I don't know if I was looking against the points, which means they're closer than they should be, or just straight up. But it's not a great home field advantage. So the Eagles have a chance. They won there in the past. We all remember games that they won there. They can't stand the Cowboys. The new players are going to be schooled this week by other guys on how much people hate the Dallas Cowboys, how they suck, and the fans suck, and everything about Dallas sucks. Jerry Jones sucks. His hair sucks. His Botox sucks. Everything sucks. I mean, so whatever the case may be, it's a big game for Dallas week. Boy, you think about some of those games. You played for Buddy Ryan, and to think about the way he started up, he started up a little too much, and then Jimmy Johnson started up. And how about them Cowboys? It's just he started up, but then Buddy with the bounty ball, and it still goes back. And the people here in Philadelphia booing Michael Irvin when he could have been paralyzed laying on the field at the vet. That was a joke. And then, I don't know, were you playing in the game where you sacked Troy Aikman 11 times? Were you playing in that game?
Yeah.
That was unbelievable. That poor guy was getting crushed. Those kind of games you think about, the interceptions in the end zone, that run them back for touchdowns. You think about it, but you never think about any other team and any other play the way you do them. So somebody's got to educate these guys. And I think Nick Sirianni's the kind of guy, and he doesn't know about the Eagles-Dallas mentality, but I'm sure people have told him, and that's just a way to fire him up. I don't know. He loves to play videos of people saying Dallas sucks and having the Dallas fans scream at the Eagles people and having the players talking about all the nonsense. And you mentioned it earlier. Fans would say to Andy Reid, I don't care if you don't win a game all year. You got to beat the Cowboys. It's just funny. And they're not even in our – I mean, you'd think the Giants in Washington would be the hatred for them. Well, I don't like the Giants fans either because they suck too. But the reality is the players are going to have to know, the new guys are going to have to know how much this town despises the Dallas Cowboys. I've called them over the years, the Cowboys fans who are, they run and hide when they stink. I call them cockroaches, because cockroaches come out when things are going well out of the muck and grime, but when it's bad, they bury themselves in the mud. That's what the Cowboys fans are, and that's what I hear. I know you remember David Akers at the draft. He says, "You guys haven't won a Super." The draft picks weren't born last time you won a Super Bowl. It was so good. He was so good.
Listen, there's no love lost. Buddy stirred it up because at the end of the day, he had already had this deep burning hatred for Dallas before he even became the Eagles head coach. You understand, historically, the NFC Championship game and Wilbur Montgomery, doing what he did to get the Eagles to the Super Bowl. It's just, I think the whole thing with the Dallas game is just, when you think about Dallas and them being self-proclaimed America's team, I think it's rubbed a lot of teams the wrong way. They're the most visible team, in the NFL, for that reason. And you just want to kick their ass, because they think they're higher and mightier than anybody else. For us, it's two important games that help determine, the division. And you got to win the division in order to get into the playoffs in most situations. That's the easiest way, to get there. But at the end of the day, listen, they don't like us. We don't like them. We enjoy, beating the hell out of them. And I'm pretty sure they enjoy, when they win games against us. But, this game is huge, for a lot of reasons, because one team is going to be 2-1. The other one's going to be 1-2. You're going to be behind the 8 ball. You're going to be down one game in the division. You're going to have an opportunity in front of the nation in primetime TV to show who and what you are, that you are more what happened in week 1 than the anomaly that was week 2. You talk about the older guys, these young guys having to learn. Listen, if I was the coach, my deal would be, okay, Devontae Smith, I want you to think about how you felt when you went into Auburn week, when you went into the Iron Bowl, okay? Multiply that by 10. That's what this week is like, because you don't quite understand it. So on and so forth. You do that with every player along the, if I'm Nick Sirianni, every rookie on this football team and every first-year guy on this football team, I'm going to go and I'm going to look at where they went to school, and I'm going to pull their rival up, and I'm going to tell them, listen, equate this to your greatest rivalry in 4 years in college. Now multiply it by 10 and understand what you saw at the link last week, okay? That's what this is like. That's why this game is important. Those 3 things. And hey, the older guys in the locker room, they can just drag them along. There's enough guys in there that understands what this game means to drag them along. But if I'm Nick Sirianni, that's what I do with my young guys this week before they step on the field tomorrow morning.
I hope that after Brandon Graham's surgery, now I don't think he can't be there, but I hope they get some kind of video thing hook up, and in one of those meetings, he talks to those players and he can fire them up and explain to them how important and how big this game is. Now, you can't get too crazy about one game, but he can explain to them how big this game is.
Oh, yeah, he can.
And fire them up. Yeah.
It's freaking Dallas. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. You get fired up about this game. I want them fired up. I want to see that fire and that vim that they played with, in week 1. I want them to be fired up, because I'm telling you right now, Dallas is at home. They're going to have their crowd. It's Monday night. It's Jerry World. I promise you, they're going to come out swinging. So our guys better be fired up and ready to swing from the word go.
Well, and I think somebody in that locker room will find a way to be able to do that. That's why you need veterans in that locker room, and there's still some guys in there. Hopefully Zach Ertz is ready to be in there too, to explain it to him as well, because he's been through a lot of those games. So it's all you got to get him, and that's a good point. You get Devontae Smith, who actually I'm still trying to figure him out. He just does everything that he can do to try to get better, and I don't think he tries to get too high or low. But he has to remember what it was like playing Auburn. he has to remember how much you hated those, especially when you went on the road and played those guys. You hated those guys. And that's what he's got to feel like going into this game. And that's what they all got to feel like going into this game. You know, you hate Dallas. And Buddy, may he rest in peace. Maybe he's got to bring somebody back to have a bounty bowl for, for this game, too.
Hey, man.
Get them all pissed. And, you know, and the snowballs at Jimmy Johnson. That was funny too. These people are ruthless. They are ruthless. And the Eagles will have fans down there too. So it'll be all kinds of crazy.
It is going to be insane down there. I will say this. You froze again. But I'll just keep talking. I want to move over for you guys over into, you know, a little Dallas preview over the next 20 minutes and talk to you about the upcoming game and what the Eagles are going to face as far as, let me click him out because he came in another one. Hey man, how many devices you got working over there, man?
You know what? I got a world of technology, but sometimes it's not the right world of technology.
Hey, listen, I tell you what, I don't know if I like this, man. I got two Howard Eskins down here that I can click in and click out. One guy's frozen, the other guy's talking to me.
Well, it's just whatever one you want. You can always do. I've always tried to do whatever you wanted to do to me anyway. So what the hell's the difference?
Well, you know, listen. If I get tired of hearing you talking, I want you to shut up. I can just click over to the other one. But you know, listen, it's all good. I was telling my viewers I want to jump into, you know, some of the meat and bones of this upcoming matchup. You know, when you look at the Dallas offense, I think that you saw two different teams from week 1 to week 2. And statistically, I got the numbers right here in front of me. The first game, Dak Prescott threw the ball 58 times. He was 42 for 58, 403 yards and a touchdown. Conversely, Ezekiel Elliott only touched the ball 11 times in the run game for 33 yards. He averaged 3 yards a carry. And then Pollard, who I think is about to get Zeke cut when this year is over. I mean, when you watch this kid play, he's just got another gear. I mean, and they got so much money wrapped up in Zeke. If they've got an out net contract, I got a feeling this might be Ezekiel Elliott's last year in Dallas when you watch Tony Pollard play. I mean, he is just electric in the run game. He's electric in the pass game. And listen, Zeke can still be Zeke, but at the end of the day, this kid gives them, you know, a second level, you know, to what they do. Conversely, in week 2, and they lose week 1 on a field goal late in the game. But in week 2, Dak Prescott only throws the ball 27 times. And he was 23 for 27, 237 yards. He didn't throw for any touchdowns. But Tony Pollard had 13 runs for 109 yards and a touchdown. Ezekiel Elliott, you know, 16 carries for 71 yards and a touchdown. I think they had something like 198 yards rushing. And the Eagles have not done all that great against the run. And the numbers aren't astronomical. But I want to say they're averaging somewhere giving up around 120, 122 yards per game. Against the Falcons, they gave up, you know, 124 yards, although they gave up 110 in the first half and they held Atlanta to only 14 in the second half. That's still 4.8 yards per carry. San Francisco, they had to run it 38 times to get to 117 yards for 3.1 per carry. The thing that scares me is that early in games, the Eagles on defense have not been good against the run. I don't know what the hell is going on with their linebackers. And listen, I love Alex Singleton. I think at the end of the day, he has not played well as he played in preseason. He hasn't played well, in my opinion, the last 2 games. I think I went back and I counted on that 2-minute drive at the end of the first half, and I think he had like 5 or 6 missed tackles. You know, if he doesn't get you right in front of him, none of these linebackers tackle all that well. They seem like they either get drugged or, you know, they're tackling 5-6 yards down the field. They look to me like they don't know where to fit in the run scheme. They're late reading plays. They don't decipher what's going on because, listen, when I played, and I get times have changed. People in this spread offense and linebackers are coached differently today because of all the misdirection things that you
Right.
see. But the guys in the backfield, the quarterback and the running back, those are the greatest liars on the offensive side of the ball. And our linebackers are looking in the backfield at the quarterback and the running back, while the offensive linemen are telling you whether it's run or pass. They're telling you, when it's run, you got a double team on the guy that's in a 2 or 3 technique, and the linebackers aren't coming down taking them off. They're looking in the backfield, and the next thing you know, an offensive lineman is on them, and the running backs got 5 or 6 yards out the gate. Now, Dallas won going back to their old formula because I believe that they're a better football team when they're more balanced, like they were last week when they won, than when they're out of balance in week one when Dak threw the ball 58 times. I got a feeling they're going to look at the film. They're going to come in. They're going to give the Eagles a healthy dose of the running game. And if they're not able to get it under control, that's going to open up the pass game because you're going to have to drop an extra guy in the box, and they're going to have problems. Major problems, in my opinion. So they got to get that squared away. I'm just dealing with the defensive side of the ball at this moment in time.
Well, they used to be able to. They had success many times against Zeke Elliott, and he's not the same back now.
There you go. The king is
contracts because, it's just because they don't last. So Pollard is the guy, but they used to be able in many of those games. I remember since Zeke Elliott's come with the Cowboys, they've had success against Zeke Elliott. Now it's not just him. You're right. It's Pollard. So they do have to stop the running game because it sets up so many things for Dak Prescott. If they're successful, I think Edwards was a better linebacker for him last year too. I really don't notice him that much now. I don't know if that's because I don't notice him or he's just not playing as well as he did last year. He was really good for him last year, but Singleton actually led the team in tackles. You talked about his missed tackles, but he actually led the team in tackles. You need that. You need Hargrave's playing great. You need Josh Sweat to step up. They've got to stop the run, and they got to put pressure on Dak Prescott because he will make mistakes. And if you put pressure on him, he will make mistakes. Now, the pressure is going to save the secondary. They need turnovers. Did they get a turnover last week? They didn't get a turnover from the 49ers.
I don't know. They don't have a turnover, nor have they turned the ball over, I don't believe.
Right. No, they haven't turned the ball over. And Atlanta, they didn't get a turnover there. There was a turnover on downs because Arthur Smith was an idiot going for it on 4th and 10. But no, they got to. Everybody else will tell you that. That's not rocket science. You got to get turnovers, but they can force Dak Prescott into mistakes, and that's what they really have to do. But to do that, they're going to have to stop the run. And I don't think it's going to be Zeke Elliott. I think you're right. I think it's going to have to be Pollard that they stop the run with Pollard because he's done a good job.
I think you're going to get a blend of the two because there's no way that that Zeke Elliott is not going to get his touches with what they're paying.
Right.
And I do think that I still think that he has a lot of football left in him. I just think that Pollard has more juice than he has right now. So he looks like he's a much better back because he's quicker. I don't think they're as great on the offensive line at run blocking as they once were either. But when you've got a guy that hits the hole, a guy who can bounce it outside like Pollard, that makes the offensive line look that much better. But I'm telling you right now, the numbers. You're talking about 29 carries versus 27 passes last week. And I'm telling you right now that if the Eagles are giving up 120 yards on the ground, the game plan for Dallas is going to come in and run the ball straight down their throat. And then that's going to open up the bootlegs, the misdirection, all of those other things, to get guys free down the field. So that's a major concern. You talk about Edwards, and this is my evaluations of the linebackers that they have. I believe that Eric Wilson is a third down linebacker. and a third down linebacker only, a guy that you bring in to blitz
Mm-hmm.
and cover. Okay, he looks like a strong safety playing linebacker. Okay, and he doesn't look like he wants any part of the running game whatsoever. I think that Alex Singleton, is probably the best linebacker on the roster, but at
Yep.
times he looks like he's confused, like he's not sure, what his keys and what his reads should be, and I wish I could tell him, listen, the offensive linemen are going to give you a key breaker here or there. But I would say 85 to 90% of the time, the offensive line is going to tell you everything. They're going to tell you where the ball is being run.
Yeah.
They're going to tell you if it's passed. That's where your eyes should be. The Eagles linebackers, they got bad eye discipline because they're looking in the wrong places. And I would venture to say that's what they're being coached. That being said, okay, you talk about TJ Edwards. TJ Edwards has always been a good run stopper, but the liability with him is in the passing game. You got Davion Taylor, who I thought that, the few plays that he got, he looked like he could be something, but the guy can't stay healthy. He's nicked up again this week. I don't know if we're going to keep him out of the game, but he's nicked up again. Sean Bradley hasn't showed them enough for them to put him on the field and get anything out. And then those two rover, Denard Avery and what's the other draft pick? The other kid that they drafted, that they play in that role when they want to go three backers and they kind of move that extra guy. He and Denard Avery, they move him all over the place. His name eludes me for some reason right now, but they just don't have enough at the linebacker position. And quite frankly, I was a little upset. And I tweeted something out. At the end of the game, I said, if the Eagles organization don't believe that having good linebackers or spending draft capital, at least on one primetime linebacker, if they don't believe that that's true, all you got to do is look at the good defenses in the NFL. Just look at the good ones, okay? Pittsburgh Steelers they spend a draft pick on a linebacker, okay? Yep. I don't know what Micah Parsons is going to be, but they moved him to defensive end. I heard he was tearing it up last week at defensive end.
Defensive end.
You look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, okay? They got two animals on the inside. Now, you can have all the good guys up front that you want, but if you don't have the guys behind you who are, in my opinion, and you may call me a little biased, I think it's the most important position on the defense. You want to know why? Because we are a hybrid of the guys with their hand on the ground because we interact with them in the run game, but we're also tied to the guys behind us. The guys on the ground, when they put their hands down, they don't hear nothing. They don't see nothing. They don't want to hear nothing. They got their own thing. And then the guys behind us, you'll see the linebackers are always looking back. Okay, what do we got? Because you got to tell us what we have to do in coverage. You have to have some of those guys on this football team if this defense is going to be halfway decent.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's I don't know if there's anybody there that they're developing now that might be a practice squad guy or might be a player that we haven't seen yet. But, one thing, Seth, that we haven't talked about is their coach. I think he's a dope. He almost screwed up Mike McCarthy. He will bleep up that game. He almost did it last week. He had some stupid reason why the clock ran down and he had to send a guy out to kick a 56-yard field goal. I don't know what the hell he was thinking. He is not a good coach. He won one Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, and that's a disgrace. He's just not that good. And if it comes down to coaching, and again, the players are going to have to do the job, but if it comes down to coaching, Mike McCarthy will make multiple mistakes in this game. I just think he's an idiot. And he's lucky he got the job, but Jerry Jones thinks he knows everything, so he hired him. But there's so many different areas. But I just think in this kind of game, you're going to have to score points. So regardless, you're probably not going to be happy with the Eagles defense because they're probably going to give up some points. But I think the Eagles are going to score some points too. I think this is a game that they can score some.
I don't mind them giving up points, just as long as we can keep pace. It just can't. We can't get in a shootout with a first year,
Right.
with basically a first year quarterback and a bunch of young wide
Yeah.
receivers. We can't do that. So that means that the defense is going to have to get some stops. That means that Jonathan Gannon is going to have to be creative. Um, you know, we haven't even talked about the offensive side of the ball as far as this Dallas game is concerned. I think that Nick Sirianni is going to have to show a lot more creativity in what he puts out there for these guys to be able to be successful on the offensive side of the ball. Listen, they know just like everyone else that the number one thing you got to do is stop the run first. If you stop the run, you make them one dimensional. Well, this may be one of those games where if Dallas wants to put 8 in the box, then hey, you go play action pass out the gate. Look the safety off one way and come back to the other way to your wide receiver. The short passing game, slants, stops, things like that. Whichever cornerback is off, you take advantage of getting some yards on first down. I think first down is going to be the most critical down. I think first down is what hurt them last week, because a lot of first downs they didn't make any yards, and what wound up happening is consequently they got in third and long situations. To me, with a young football team, one of the most important downs is first down. And you really can't, if you decide to throw the ball on first down, then you almost, to me, you're committed to throwing the ball all 3 downs, because you cannot on 2nd and 10 turn around and hand the ball off, and they got 8 guys in the box, and now you're facing a certain third and long.
They got to have an intermediate passing game too. It can't be just bubble screens and deep passes. They've got to have an intermediate passing game, and they've got the players to be able to do it. I don't think any of them. I can't think of any of them that are afraid to go over the middle. So you got to have something there to. Well, apparently they've had guys. Not apparently they've had guys open deep, but you still got to have a complete passing game. And I think teams, it's too easy to scout them if they don't have that intermediate passing game. And I think they're going to use the tight ends. I don't know why that was the case last week. Nick Sirianni will speak later this week, and if nobody asked the question, I'll ask the question: why was there really not an intermediate passing game? Because I don't remember anybody asking them that. But they got to have that too, because they have the players to do it. So I don't know why it wasn't there.
Well, listen, the 49ers got good linebackers, and
yep.
they were dropping the safety down in the box. So you're trying to take Goddard away with the safety, and then you got Warner on the weak side playing the will backer. He can cover some wide receivers. The guy is just a straight player. But you can't be discouraged by what other teams present to you, to the point where it makes you move away from what you want to do.
Correct.
You got to require your players to win those battles and get open, because if they can do that, that's going to open up the running game. That's going to open up, if I'm a linebacker and I'm being beat by a tight end or a back out of the backfield, now that puts me on high alert. That makes me loosen up in other areas. That opens up the running game. That tightens me up, the coverage, which is going to open up things on the outside. All of these things, come into play. I'm just curious, what do the Eagles, what do they do going into this game? Because you're playing against a defense that, quite frankly, isn't that good. They thought they had solved their problems at cornerback. They haven't done that. You got, the best pass rusher is out. They're still pretty good at linebacker. Their inside linebackers, are still good players. Van Der Esch is still making plays. Jalen Smith, still runs like with 4.4 speed. They've got some pieces, but they don't seem like they're tied together. What area do the Eagles attack, and how do they attack it in a way where they can win time of possession, move the chains, and, to your point, score points? Because they've got to put points on the board, because Dallas is going to put some on the boards on the other side. They're going to make adjustments.
Well, Dallas is aware of the Eagles' deep game, so they have players, 2 guys that can just beat anybody.
So hold up.
They will show that.
Howard, before you, and I'm going to let you have that thought. Hold that thought. I'm going to say this. I want to say this before we wrap the show. For years, we've been talking about the deep shots down the field. Now we have the guys to do it. Okay, but there's a difference in how you need to attack the deep game, opposed to throwing the ball intermediately. You can throw intermediately with your wide receivers. I think that Nick Sirianni last week got caught up on the fact that the 49ers were showing a lot of man coverage,
Yep.
and they thought that that was an area you could attack. That's the time that you really attack, because most teams want to be zone teams, and mix in a little bit of man. But when they get in a situation where they have to play man, that's the time where you attack. And that's the time you take the shots down the field. Just because, you think you have the matchups, and just because you get man-to-man coverage doesn't necessarily mean that you have to take the shots down the field. You can still run a 10-yard, 12-yard comeback, okay? You can still run the speed outs off of man coverage. You can run all of those routes, and you must run all of those routes. So I'm not one that's like in love with this thought that, the minute I see man coverage, we got to take a shot. No, you don't have to. And I think sometimes that's what gets you in trouble, because when you do that, that's a wasted down if you don't hit.
Well, you could the intermediate stuff. Obviously, they've got to do that better. And whoever, Quez Watkins, Devontae Smith, there's nobody that can cover them at one-on-one. There's just nobody. And so the quarterbacks obviously got to be able to read where that double coverage may come from. And I don't know why either one of those players can't beat the other guy when they just get single coverage. They're just too good talent-wise to not be able to do it. But that's up to the quarterback, because the quarterback has those options. I mean, the coach puts in the play, but the quarterback has options. And the thing is, I don't know, when he ran, I just don't know if there was somebody else that was open. And that's the one thing, and the coaches are probably, unless somebody sits down there and looks at the coach's tape and sees, all right, well, no, he did have another option. He used his legs to buy him some time. And that's what those quarterbacks that have their legs, it's not that they run. It's fascinating to think Patrick Mahomes says, oh, he just, he can run and he can get out of trouble. He only averaged 3.5 runs a game last year because he uses his legs to buy time. That's what Kyler Murray does too. Now, he'll run, but he does use his legs a lot more, keeping his eyes downfield. And I know Jalen Hurts does that a lot, and Mike Quick talks about that a lot on the broadcast. Okay, he kept his eyes down the field. But just because you keep your eyes down the field doesn't mean that you see what your second and third option was, and was it there? And that's what, unless we look at the coach's tape, we don't know. But there's got to be intermediate stuff, because there's just no way. If they have the time, that's the key. If they have the time and they give the quarterback the time, he might have to use his legs once in a while. There's no way you can cover those receivers all that time. I don't care whether it's 10 yards, it's 12 yards. I don't care what it is. There's no way you can do that, and especially against the Dallas defense that I don't think is anything but average. Now, Micah Parsons obviously is really good, but Jalen Hurts is going to have to be careful of him because he can create turnovers by coming at you, and if you don't feel him coming in there, you got problems. Now, Jalen fumbled the ball. I guess he fumbled the ball once, and the Eagles recovered it. So he's got to be wary of that. But if he gets protection, he's going to find players. And it doesn't. You're right. It doesn't have to be deep. It just lets them know, hey, listen, we can go there, but there's going to be a lot of other stuff. With those tight ends and those wide receivers, how can there not be more intermediate passing in this football game? And last week, who knows? San Francisco was that good.
And listen, I know that there are some people that's going to give me heat for this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I just think that when it comes to Jalen Hurts, again, he's still a young quarterback. He's learning how to play the game the proper way. He just learned how to 2 years ago really be an efficient thrower of the football under Lincoln Riley. Last year we just kind of threw him to the fire at the end of the year when I felt like Doug Peterson should have been giving him a little bit, along the way, kind of like Taysom Hill. Every single time he was in, he ran with the ball or he was a decoy. But he's still learning, And the thing that I'm trying to decipher when I watch the offense and I watch the passing game, okay, is Jalen Hurts, is Nick Sirianni only giving him a half-field read? Okay, is he reading the right side or the left side and that's it? And we got to be cognizant too and understand that there's a clock going off in his head. 1001, 1002, 1003. You better be getting the hell out of there because the rush is coming. Okay, so your reads have got to be quicker. He's still learning this offense, to the point where when you look at a guy like, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, you know what? When they call a play, they can close their eyes and they can point to where everybody is on the field and they know where they are. Okay, so once they go through their progressions, they can go to the check down. They can go to their safety valve because they know where it is. Jalen Hurts is still learning that. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is he getting a full field read or is he just getting a half field read? Because, I've seen, comments over here, in the comment board. I've heard people saw people on social media and heard people, on the radio. Hey, guys are open and Jalen isn't seeing them. Well, listen, if the guy is open on the right side and Jalen's read is right to left, by the time he gets all the way back to the right side, guess what? It's too long. He's not seasoned enough to understand how to scan and move back and forth. He's looking, he's waiting for these guys to be where they're supposed to be. Obviously, the timing isn't there. And when you don't have, those guys in the middle of the field, like our two tight ends that are an integral part of the passing game, guess what? He's not getting back to the other side where you and I see that guy is open, whether we're looking at it from the coach's tape, the all 22, or we just happen to see a guy running down the field, during the game. It's not feasible.
Hey, here it's pretty simple in the NFL. Your quarterback wins you games. And it's too bad because there's so many other players that do so many other things that help you win the games. Mm-hmm. But the quarterback has got to win the games for you. And that's really what it comes down to. And that's where the Eagles are going to have to – he's going to have to get better. He's not bad, but he's going to have to get better.
He's going to have to grow up. He's going to have to grow up real fast. Hey, Howard, that's our time, man. Listen, we could do this. We could do this all night, but
I want you to end this with just say thank you, King. You don't have to thank me. Just call me King because you understand royalty.
Really?
I knew you wouldn't do that. I knew you wouldn't.
I couldn't do it if I wanted to, man. I really didn't.
I know. That's why I said
Listen,
it.
when I introduce you, that'll probably be the only time in our lifetime where I'll ever call you King.
You don't have to call me King because you call me so many things. You could probably say it here, but you're an asshole. You're all that.
Yeah, you can say it here. Let it all out. It's all good. Hey, listen. Hey, there's a lot of people in my chat group that feel that way about you. I've been blocking them all during the show because you know what? You can't come on the Seth Joyner show and be disrespectful to my guests.
That's
just
right.
Can't do it. So there's 2 or 3 people that I block.
Remember, social media is not social and it's not media for sure.
It's all good. Hey, my friend. Hey, listen, I appreciate you. Look forward to to getting together and doing it again. Like I tell my guests every single week, our time is our most valuable commodity. And I thank you for the last hour and 8 minutes that you gave to the Seth Joyner Show. Very insightful. And I appreciate you, man. And
stay healthy. Same to you. Stay healthy. If that's everybody, let's stay healthy too.
You got it. All right, guys,
Thanks.
That's the show for the week. As always, be good to each other and take care of each other. But most importantly, make sure you love each other. The Eagles travels to Dallas. I usually end it right there, but Dallas sucks. Let's kick Dallas's ass. Fly, Eagles, fly. Peace.